Hello everyone, welcome to MAPA classes. Today we will learn about some of the useful literary devices very important used in English literature. So let's get started. So what are literary devices? First of all, let's understand it through a definition mainly. Literary devices are techniques or structures writers use to convey their message, evoke emotions, create a vivid imagery, and enhance the overall impact of their writing. They can be found in various forms of literature, including poetry, prose, drama, and even non-fiction. So basically, literary device, if you have to understand, we have to see it as a broad term. It is a very broad term for all the techniques, styles, and strategies an author or a writer uses to enhance their piece, their writing. Whatever techniques, we'll see, understand these through various examples. With the millennia of literature in hundreds of different languages, humankind has selected quite a few of these writing devices which continue to evolve day by day. We have to understand that one by one. We can understand these. Some of the examples are simile, metaphor, oxymoron, and so on. We'll understand it. But basically, the small nuances, the comparisons, the examples in easy term, if we understand, used in writing basically when we in English grammar they help when we go for writing essays, compositions, notices, emails, letters in our own words. And literature, of course, these are literary devices help us which help us to formulate our whole literature thing. Okay, so let's get ahead and understand these in detail with some examples. Basically, in easy language, literary devices can entail general elements that come back again and again in a work of literature, as well as the specific and precise treatment of words only used once. Basically, literary device is anything that can take boring or flavorless writing and turn it into a rich and engaging prose. Let's get to understand some of the different kinds of literary devices in our English literature. वैसे तो there are so many literary devices, but here we will understand these 13 of them for the school students basically. So let's begin. Some of the different kinds of literary devices are, as you can see on the screen, they are alliteration, allusion, anagram, analogy, epigraph, imagery, metaphor, motive, oxymoron, personification, satire, simile, and symbolism. Let's get ahead. Let's begin with alliteration first. Alliteration is a literary device. Very important. We have to understand alliteration is a kind of literary device where consecutive words in a phrase or line begin with the same consonant sound. It is often used for emphasis, rhythm, or to create a memorable effect in writing. For example, actually, basically, alliterations are also those tongue twisters which we use now. Like Sally sells seashells by the seashore is a classic example of alliteration because of the repetition of the S sound at the beginning of each word. Alliteration can be found in various forms of literature from poetry to prose, and it adds a musical quality to the language. Basically, alliteration is a literary technique of using a sequence of words that begin with the same letter or sound for a poetic or whimsical effect. Actually, these things are used to make our literature all the more interesting, attractive, to engage our people, to not make the literature very monotonous or boring. I'll give you one more example. Like, for example, many of Stanley's iconic comic book characters have alliterative names. For example, Peter Parker, Matthew Murdock, Reed Richards, Bruce Banner. So these same sounding things make it a bit interesting. So what to say? That's it. Next, let's go to the next one. Let's get started with allusion. An allusion is a reference to a well-known person, place, event, literary work, or other cultural touchstone within a piece of writing. Allusions are often brief and indirect, requiring readers to have some prior knowledge of the reference in order to fully understand its significance in the context of the text. Basically, it's an indirect reference to another figure, event, place, or work of art that exists outside the story. For example, if we want to narrate someone a story, we make comparisons. Now, like for example, in Hindi, if we say this character is like Lord Rama, so we are making the character seem as if that he is an ideal person because we are comparing him to Lord Rama. So we should make allusion as something that to make someone understand a particular character, we are giving him a reference of another character so that the character sketch can be easily drawn. When I say that this character resembles Lord Rama, it shows that that person is an ideal person, a person of values and principles. So in that case, I have taken the allusion of Lord Rama. Let's see one more example. Authors usually use allusions to enrich their writing, add depth to their characters or themes, or make connections between their work and broader cultural or historical contexts. For example, let's see an example, it will be easier to understand. Basically, allusions are to make someone understand the situation or the character through by making him compare to something which some work, some literary or historical work which has already been done, so that the character also highlights and a comparison is also created. For example, a writer might allude to Greek mythology by referencing the Achilles heel of a character, implying a vulnerability or weakness. This Achilles heel must have been used somewhere, mainly in a Greek mythology, which implies a vulnerability or weakness. So we can use that in our context as well to highlight someone's vulnerability or weakness. One more example, or they might allude to Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet when describing a pair of star-crossed lovers. So it's easy to understand now. If we want to explain about a couple, how which kind of a couple they are, so we can give the example of Romeo and Juliet. So we have taken the reference of another couple from a famous literary work, and then we can explain our part in it. Okay, let's move ahead. Anagram. An anagram is a word or phrase formed by rearranging the letters of another word or phrase to create a new one. The new word or phrase contains all the original letters exactly once. For example, the word listen can be rearranged to form the anagram silent. Only the letters have been rearranged and we have got a new word. Anagrams are often used as word games or puzzles, but they can also be found in literature and creative writing as a playful or cryptic device. They act as a playful or cryptic device. Basically, it is a word puzzle where the author or writer rearranges the letters in a word or phrase to make a new word or phrase. These basically are, there is no comparison or reference. These are basically used to make the writing more playful or cryptic. Like for example, dusty can, the letters of the word dusty can be rearranged and make study. The letters of the word night can be rearranged and made thing. Safe can become vast. Peach can become cheap. Elbow becomes bellow, and so on. There are several examples of anagram. They are just used for some kind of a, to make the work more interesting and entertaining. That's it. Let's get ahead. Analogy. What is an analogy? Let's first see. An analogy is a comparison between two things, typically for the purpose of explanation or comparison, clarification. It's a comparison between two things. It helps to illustrate a concept by likening it to something more familiar or concrete so that it's more easily explainable. Analogies often involve identifying similarities between the two things being compared. So we take the two units, two things, and we see their similarities in order to compare them, even if they are otherwise dissimilar. Let's understand this with an example. For example, if someone is trying to explain the concept of a cell to someone unfamiliar with biology, they might use an analogy like a cell is like a miniature factory with different organelles performing specific functions just like workers in different departments. So we compared the different organelles of the cell to workers in different departments. One more example of an analogy can be like in biology, a famous statement is there: mitochondria is the powerhouse of a cell. So basically, we are comparing mitochondria to the powerhouse. Basically, powerhouses are in the electricity thing, but we have compared these two things. Mitochondria also generates power for the cell, and powerhouses also do the same thing for their department. That is why that is also an analogy to make things more understandable, to give clarification. Let's move ahead. Epigraph. An epigraph is basically a short quotation, a phrase, or an excerpt typically found at the beginning of a book, chapter, poem, or section of a text. It serves to set the tone, provide context, or offer insight into the theme or subject matter of the work that follows. Epigraphs can be sourced from a wide variety of texts, including literature, poetry, philosophy, scripture, or even song lyrics. For example, we must have seen in various books and all, when we read those books, writer in the beginning you see a short note by the writer. It basically, as it is written here, what is the use of epigraphs? It basically serves to set the tone, to create a connect with the audience, to increase the level of relativity. It can be a message of gratitude, it can be an introductory message or whatsoever. In books, basically, we get to see it. Authors often use epigraphs to establish a connection between their work and other works of literature, or to frame their own writing within a broader cultural or intellectual context. This is basically mainly important to connect with the reader. It is mainly used in that. They can also be used to foreshadow themes or motives that will be explored in the text. For example, let's see one more example. A novel about the passage of time might begin with an epigraph from a famous poem about the fleeting nature of life, setting the stage for the exploration of similar themes within the narrative. An epigraph, basically, it's an independent pre-existing quotation that introduces a piece of work, typically with some thematic or a symbolic relevance. Next, imagery. So let's see what is an imagery. From by the name only, it is very easily understandable. Imagery is basically to create an image, to make our writing so easily understandable, so lightweight, so easy to understand, so that when the readers read our work, our literature, an image is made in their mind, an image is formed where the whole story plays in their mind. Let's see. Imagery refers to the use of vivid, that is simple and descriptive language. Our language should be very easily descriptive so that they can form different kinds of images and structures in their mind that appeals to the senses, creating mental images for the reader. It involves using words and phrases that evoke sensory experiences such as sight. We can create images, sound. We can also understand what kind of sound is being mentioned. We can even understand the tastes, touch, and smell, to basically get very much involved with the literature, to paint a picture in the reader's mind so that The whole literary work is easily grasped by the reader. Authors use imagery to make their writing more engaging and to help readers visualize scenes, characters, and emotions more vividly. By appealing to the senses, imagery can evoke strong emotional responses and create a deeper connection between the reader and the text. For example, these are imageries are basically used with junior class students when their senses are basically developing. They are at their developmental stage. So we need to understand all these sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell of their so that things are easily understandable to them. Let's see with this example. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the meadow. The tall grass swayed gently in the breeze, while the scent of wild flowers filled the air. In the distance, birds' song echoed through the trees, adding to the tranquility of the scene. In this passage, the author uses imagery to create a vivid picture of a peaceful meadow, appealing to the reader's senses of sight, smell, and sound to evoke a sense of calm and serenity. So, as we read these sentences in this passage, we make an image in our mind that the sun was hung low in the sky, there was a golden glow, the grass swayed. So we can all make images how the grass might be swaying gently in the breeze. We can understand how the wildflowers smell might be. So these are basically imageries. These are all literary devices helping to make our text, our literary work more easily understandable, grasping, relatable, and all these things. Next. Metaphor. So metaphors are very important, very commonly used in our English literature, especially Shakespearean literature. Shakespeare uses metaphors a lot. Metaphors are similar to analogy. Basically, let's understand. A metaphor is a figure of speech that describes an object or action by referring to something else, suggesting a similarity between the two. So in analogy, we saw that we are comparing two things to get more explanation and clarification, even if they are dissimilar. But here, it is metaphors are somewhat similar to analogy. Unlike a simile, which uses like or as to make a comparison. So we'll look at simile also later in our video. Uh, a metaphor implies a direct resemblance between the two things being compared. We are making the two things look similar. For example, consider the metaphor time is a thief. This is a very effective example. In this metaphor, time is being compared to a thief, suggesting that it takes away things from us without our realizing it. Just like a thief, time also flies. Just as a thief steals possessions without permission. So time flies. That is also a metaphor only. Here also time is compared to a thief, making it sound as if both are similar things. Thieves also take away our things from us without even our realization and without our permission. Same happens with our time. Time waits for no one. It flies away without our realization and without our permission. So metaphors are commonly used in literature, poetry, and everyday language to convey complex ideas, emotions, or experiences in a more vivid and imaginative way. They can add depth and richness to writing by encouraging readers to make connections between seemingly unrelated concepts. For example, time is a different thing, thief is a different thing. But then we have compared these two and made them seem like two same things. Both of these things are same. So metaphors are that basically. They compare two different things to show their similarities, but here the they insist that they both are same. In analogy, it's like they both are dissimilar. There is no similarity, but for a easier understanding we use it. But in metaphor, we insist that they are same. A very important example here is the poem by Shakespeare, all the world is a stage and all the men and women merely players. So in that As You Like It poem, Uh, In As You Like It, there is a poem of William Shakespeare, a very famous poem. He refers the world to a stage, and it's the whole poem. It seems as if it's totally same. It's the reality. We have different roles to play. The world is a stage, and we have different stages in our life as well. We come and perform our parts and go. So it's basically it's the this whole poem is only a metaphor. Very important and a very famous poem. Let's go to the next one. Thank you, everyone. In this one, in this video, we understood about some of the literary devices, and we'll continue in the part two of this video for the rest of the literary devices. Very important, these are in our English language and literature both. If you want to continue, go to our next video. And if you want live classes on our channel, on our website or app, please contact on the details given. Thank you.